Welcome everybody to Free Association over blank. Today it's Free Association over coffee. Next week it could be Free Association over sushi. Brought to you by the Academy of Broadcast Media, where it's being recorded visually and audio. Have you ever listened to a podcast or sports radio program and thought to yourself, I could do better? Well, now's the time to step up and find out at the Academy of Broadcast Media. It's a whole new world out there, and the ones who are going to conquer it are the ones who are going to have the know-how and the will to stake their claim in the industry. Armed with first-hand knowledge and training by industry professionals, the Academy of Broadcast Media gives you the skills needed for the industry. It's time to stop being a dreamer and instead start being a doer. Learn how to become part of the industry that you've always dreamed of. So enough thinking about it, pick up the phone, call 973-756-2128, and make it happen today. You owe it to yourself to get the training for a new rewarding career. The Academy of Broadcast Media. Empower your media, empower yourself. Luis?
Nice. That's a great introduction. It's fantastic.
This is it. We've started.
Well, this is good. So honestly, this is a phenomenal moment right now for us because I think that being here in this particular studio in Patterson where I work is very serendipitous. There's no other word for it. I think it's fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
And so this podcast that we wanted to do was something that came about just from conversation. Andrew and I have known each other for more than
a long time.
Years.
I mean, well, for starters, introduce yourself a little bit.
Yeah. Okay. Very good. That sounds good. So my name is Luis Hernandez. I am a social worker professionally. I work here in the city of Patterson. I've been here for 21 years doing some social work in the school system, which is very rewarding. It's very mission work, and I love it. Some amazing teachers and administrators, good people here, doing some really good work to try to help the community through education, which is the heart of our democracy. Is really being able to truly be able to impact lives that can then be inspired to go out and impact other people. Just like I was inspired in Bergen High School to go out and continue to study, through Ms. Mink. She was an educator.
Mm-hmm.
She was one of the best teachers I've ever had. So she really guided me and sort of believed in me before I even knew that what I really wanted to become. And so this is what it's about, sort of like looking at educationally how we can impact our children. And this podcast is really about discussing who I am, my history, my life, the impact that my parents and my family have had. Like all of us, our families are very influential in how we grow. I mean, without them, obviously, without our mothers and fathers, we have no life. We don't exist.
Yeah. So
we have to acknowledge that and understanding that history of how we come to be who we are. And so this podcast, as a social worker, is sort of like a reflection of everything and nothing, and sort of like many of the experiences that I've had in my life working professionally, and hopefully being able to share my experience with other people that can relate and understand, oh, that's a good word. I can learn something from that. Or this is something that I've been meaning to discuss. Maybe it's a discussion that we wanted to have with somebody, but we just didn't find the proper time, proper space. So this is kind of like you and I coming together, having this discussion. And obviously, as I was your coach in Little League, with my son as well, Adam.
That's how we met. It was through baseball, through your son Adam, and the infamous speech of 12-year-old All-Stars that I actually forgot about until Bobby Conrad reminded me. And then sure enough, last time we met, you brought that up and I was like, wow.
That was a good speech. Right?
Yeah, it was passionate.
Well, you know what? Let me share that speech because you guys won't know what
I
we're
think
talking
that
about.
that does actually, I think, shape perspective into who you are as an individual.
Very true, very true. So this is what happened, right? I was actually coaching Little League. I love baseball. I'm passionate about it. And so I was coaching Little League baseball, and Andrew was on that team in addition to my son Adam. And so we made the 12-year All-Star team, and everybody was there. We were having one of our first practices, and it was a hot July day, and everybody was just like not into it. It was just flat. So we brought everybody into the dugout, and I had noticed that there were a whole bunch of other kids that didn't make that All-Star team, and they were actually on the outside of the fence looking in, literally, along with their parents, right? Because they really wanted to be part of this team.
That was a lot. I mean, to me personally, like, making those summer all-star teams are something I always really aspired to do when I played Little League. I had 4 years, and 2 of the 4 years, I made the team, and I was stoked on it. It was actually 2 years with you coaching and Adam, and playing alongside Adam as well.
Yeah, and it was really good. And you always there was something about your relationship with Adam that was also very, over time, it evolved into something of a deeper relationship beyond the playing field. But the beauty of playing baseball is that you develop these relationships that truly then you go out into the field of life, and there's where you really form. So this particular sunny day in July, where everybody was just flat, the practice
we were sluggish,
were horrible. They were sluggish. But I said, you know what? And we sat everybody down, and this is the speech that I told them. It was, I said to them, all those kids out there would wish that they were sitting here in this dugout on this side of the field playing because they didn't make the team and they really wanted to be on this team. You guys have had the opportunity to be on this team. So now here you are. And any one of those kids out there would give their left testicle to be on this team.
To a bunch of 12-year-old kids.
And let me tell you, when I said that left testicle speech, let's just call it the left testicle speech.
Yep.
Everybody looked up.
That caught them.
Everybody, all of you guys looked up, and it was like we hit you with a bat across the head.
And you probably said it too, and like didn't break a sweat, didn't bat an eye at what you said. But I'm sure us as 12-year-old kids, you said the word testicle, we probably all started laughing a little bit. And that kind of maybe gave us a laugh, and it just loosened us up in some way.
Environment.
Yeah.
And as a result, how did we have that practice afterwards?
We went on, and I couldn't tell you how the practice went, but I know that we went on and we had a great run that summer, ending in the state tournament. So
we were 3 of like more than 500 teams in the state of New Jersey.
Yeah,
and we that was a miracle in of itself.
And that was 10 years ago, more than 10 years ago. And that's,
well, you were 12.
Yeah,
so that was 15 years ago.
More or less, that was the basis of our relationship there. It started.
So as time went on, so that relationship over time is something fantastic. And I believe that nothing happens by chance. I think everything is very much destined to occur. And in light of that, we've been meaning to meet, to do something, to do a podcast, just to be able to relate and talk a little bit about our lives and what is this like? What is life? Life 101. Share
a little bit of perspective and our own experiences, just in hopes and faith that it would help someone else. I mean,
exactly.
You more than me have seen more experiences being a social worker. But I feel in my path and in my life, a lot of the experiences I have, you said they're not by chance. They always have a purpose. And I know that I'm not alone in the things that I've encountered in my life. And I know that you are, and no one else is either. So that's the fundamental, that's the foundation of this podcast, is to share perspectives on life's events, life's happenings, and just a little bit more understanding of the world.
And the human experience. It's really what it's about. I mean, it's one species. We're human beings, right? So we do have a particular take on life as a species.
Yeah.
And I realize as time goes on that we're more similar than we are different. We're very similar, even genetically, right? So there's a lot of components of our lives that are very similar. And one of those things is concretely how we all come from a family. Family is very important.
Nuclear. I think there's a quote, the more things change, the more they stay the same.
True.
Yeah.
True.
But we all have to understand where, not just our parents, but where our grandparents and where our grandparents came from.
Right.
And
Yeah.
100 years seems like a long time ago, but really in 1900s, that's not a long time ago in the grand scheme of things.
No, 100 years is but a blink of an eye
Mhm.
in the life of the universe. So, but for us, obviously, chronologically speaking, a lot happens on this planet in 100 years.
Yeah.
And some things that, for us to understand where we come from, is to know where we're going.
Yeah.
And I think that that's also part of understanding our past. Being in peace with that past allows us to be able to understand, what do we do now? What is my role? How am I defined? And also, how do I interact with other people? How do I embrace other people that may look different than me, or think different, or from a different religion or a different part of the world? Well, at the end, everyone is looking for security. We're all looking for shelter. We're all looking to be loved.
Mhm.
We're all looking to be acknowledged. Very similar universal needs. And that's who we are, which is similar to Abraham Maslow, who was a psychologist, about the hierarchy of needs.
Yeah, we're all trying to feel something, whether that is some love and affection, whether it's this moment of like a thorough life, whether it's this moment of where you feel dead inside. I mean, none of us really go and crave that moment, I'm sure, but it's just like those are the things you feel. And like, as a fellow human being myself, it's like we are all going to feel emotions. And like, it's weird because there's this almost, I don't want to use the word toxic masculinity, but there is a little bit of like this, are we not allowed to feel things, not allowed to feel emotions just because of what our biological makeup is? And like, no, we need to feel emotions to feel and understand life.
Correct. Right. And we're human beings.
Mhm.
And even as men, once being children, most of us are raised by our mothers.
Yeah.
So it's fantastic. I mean, I think that's changing in terms of how we're raising our kids now. There's more of an impact on the men and the fathers being more active. But in reality, traditionally, we have had more mothers raise us, and that shapes our perspective. It shapes our thinking.
Mhm.
It also defines how we form relationships as we become men, how we respect women.
Yes.
Right. So all those dynamics really are very concrete, because without the woman, without the mother,
Mhm.
there is no life.
Yeah. The divine
We don't
feminine.
exist. The divine feminine. We don't exist. Adam is important in the book of Genesis, right, in the Bible.
Yeah.
But Eve is very important, because without her, there's no procreation.
No. It's so funny that you just brought that up, because I actually read this week just a little bit of this thread on Reddit, and it was someone asking like, what was your firsthand experience like in active combat and people of our armed forces? And this one individual replied, and he's like, I was a medic, and no matter what, when people were on their deathbed, when they were ailing, when they were hurt in combat, they never cried out for their fathers. They always said, where's my mom?
Wow.
Where's my mother?
That's powerful.
Yeah, I didn't even think of that until you just said that, and now I'm like, it's got me rolling again.
No, I think that relationship is important. Our relationship to our mothers really does define us, and really shows us also our certain level of maturity. How we respond to our mothers really is a reflection of who we are as men, and who we are as people, because it does define how we're going to live our life every single day. And all of our relationships are always focused on someone else. No matter what it is that we do in life, it's always focused on that. But I think that this discussion is really focused on both how we are defined by our parents and our families, and also what do we do as we're moving through life and then we become adults. What happens in that process? How do we then see our relationships with significant others? How do we see our relationships with our children and with our parents? Because right now we're sort of like the sandwich generation.
Mhm.
So most of us who have children also have our parents. And so we are kind of like in the middle, trying to balance life, taking care of our aging parents, taking care of our children, those who are moving and evolving and going to high school, college, etc. But they're still looking for us at some level of dependence. And also relationship. What do we do with our partners? How do we handle that? And also our careers.
Mhm. Before we even have anything out of college, it's like, that's an interesting way of putting it. The fact that that is our career, because I'm not a parent by any means, shape, or form. I'm not even like a parent to a pet.
Right.
But I can only imagine like the perspective that changes when you do have an offspring or someone to care about, where that is literally your day in, day out job, where you have to be applicable to someone else's needs before even yourself.
Very difficult to be unselfish.
It is. It really is, you know?
We want to be selfish. It's our nature.
Absolutely, yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
Our ego is what drives all of our decisions for the most part. Right? I mean, we want to be what we want to be. We want to do our will. We want to do what we want to do. We don't want to do what anybody else tells us what to do. We want to do what we want to do. And our ego is at the center of it. And so that whole relationship with ourselves and then our relationship with other is at the heart of these discussions.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's we named it a free association because in psychological terms, for those of us who didn't study psychology and who are not psychologists, who are not in this field, free association is basically having an open discussion, and we do that very organically.
Yeah.
Right. We do that very organically. It happens to be coffee because I love coffee.
Mm-hmm.
My father was a farmer at one point, and he cultivated coffee. And coffee's obviously we run on it.
Mm-hmm.
We have commercials.
America runs on Dunkin'.
So all of this is actually very, very concrete. It's something that I enjoy. And so the conversation it's just a free association. Is we sit down and we have associations of whatever happens, as you have seen very briefly right now. And so that's how we came up with free associations over coffee. But it could be over any meal you're having.
The coffee is an allegory. It was at one point, it was sushi.
Right, exactly. We came up with coffee because coffee seems to be, it is universal. All cultures drink coffee. And usually from a culture perspective, where we're just having some Turkish food or we have some Turkish coffee, that coffee is actually a place where you drink coffee and you sit back and you just reflect and you think about life.
Mm-hmm.
And usually coffee is part of the dessert. So you've already had your meal. You've shared a table of tremendous banquet.
Yeah.
And then you just reflect and you talk about, what is life? Where are you today? What's going on? And so it's kind of like that. It's just very natural, very free association, and it's to be organic. It's really just to be very natural in it. And in light of that, so we can follow a certain agenda pattern. It's just to be able to, like I said before, being a social worker and doing this kind of work for a while, I do have to go back to my parents because I just want to just briefly talk about my mother and my father. They were born in the Dominican Republic, and I came into the States when I was like 7 years old, and I'm the youngest of 11 children, which in and of itself is a community.
Yeah,
a lot of people.
That's a lot.
It's a lot of people. So being the last of 11 children, I see myself very fortunate to be on this planet, to have this experience, to have been born. I tell my mom, I was a mistake. I wasn't supposed to be here. And I say it kiddingly, obviously, but she's always said, no, that's not true.
It's almost like being a cheat code. It's like a cheat code being the 11th person because you have 10 other people to pass down this perspective and experiences and firsthand knowledge to you that you're just not going to get.
I could not have gotten that education anywhere else because I learned and I saw so much as I observed all of my brothers and sisters going through high school, moving on to college, getting married, having children. All I could see was like, this is really difficult stuff because I saw a lot of their struggles.
Yeah.
I saw a lot of beautiful moments, but you also see, and that's why I admire my mother and my father. I really look at them as my heroes because what they gave us was, one, they dedicated their lives to us as a family. And there were a lot of situations with 11 kids. There's always one level of developmental phase going on. There's always confusion. There's always like conflict. So anyway, so that was sort of like I'm very fortunate to have been able to spend time with them enough that by the time I was 18, everybody was gone. Everybody was left the house. So I got to really engross myself even more into that culture and that tradition, to reflect with my father, what was it like to be born in DR, and to live as a farmer? That's foreign to me. I have no idea what that is.
It's foreign to a lot of people. I mean, we grew up in rural, like I guess we're in rural or suburban New Jersey,
Yeah.
10 minutes outside of New York City. There are no farms here.
No, nothing. Like you don't go and get wild stock, and
No.
there's nothing.
You're not,
We're
you're not killing
exposed to
chickens
that.
for dinner. You're going to the supermarket. You're going to get a chicken that was killed who knows where in the U.S.
Right,
and you're going to
yeah.
go home and cook it.
And they freeze it and bring it to your super shop right or wherever. And so as I was when I would talk with him and discuss a lot of that, it just occurred to me that I have no idea who this man was.
Mm-hmm.
It took me to the age of 21 when I first went back to the Dominican Republic with him to see him in his natural environment, and I didn't know who that man was. I had no idea who he was. So my father's name was Valeriano, like Christian Bale.
Yeah.
Christian Bale. Well, his nickname is Bale. Right?
Okay.
But in Spanish it's pronounced Vale.
Mm-hmm.
So that he was someone that I think was someone that was raised with tremendous foundation into who he was as a human being. He also saw how his parents, because I would ask him how his mother and father lived.
Mm-hmm.
He was the oldest in his family, so he became the man at the age of 15. He was the man of the house because my grandfather was a businessman who would travel, and this was sort of like in the outskirts of the city, but he would spend days and weeks and months. So after a while, he realized my grandmother, told him, someone has to be the man of the house.
Yeah.
So he became the man of the house at the age of 15.
Just because someone had to be.
He was the oldest, so that by nature, you're the one who takes charge. And his youngest brother, my uncle Sergio, he admired him so much. They were like about, I think, 7-10 years apart. He admired my father for who he was. And he always said he was the best soldier. And my father was the best soldier. And I reflected on that when I spoke to my uncle years later. And this is sort of like, that inspires me even to this day. I'm driven by my father's presence. And so understanding that life that he led was so broad, a man who worked in a factory making bricks, and then you would take these bricks and put them on the streets of this town of Jarabacoa. That is incredible. Literally like founding father of this town on a concrete level.
Yeah.
And so when he would tell me these stories, it just blew my mind, to see him in that way. But it was something that I see. I'll give you an example of how amazing this world is in terms of destiny. One of my older sisters, her name was Australia. She went to bring coffee to my father and lunch during the time that he was working in one of the streets, putting the pavement down.
Mm-hmm.
And they happened to be in this part of the community in the neighborhood that they had like nice houses, more suburban like.
Yeah.
And she looked up and she saw this beautiful ranch house that was there. And she said, I would love to live there one day. She was like 10 years old. And my father said to her, well, if you work hard in this lifetime, you can one day live in a house like that. And today she lives in that house, that same house.
How did she get there?
The beauty of the destiny of life, that from that small town, my other sister, Carmen, she got married to this man that was living in New York.
Mm-hmm.
Just that we have this background in New York behind us. And she got married, and it was interesting because there was a photographer in the town that knew this man who was traveling from New York to Dominican Republic, and he was looking for a wife to marry. And the photographer knew our family, and he knew that it was a family of good reputation. So he told him, listen, come to this house. The Hernandez family has 4 daughters. Maybe you like one of them, and maybe you can fall in love with him. I don't know.
Yeah.
So he brought him to our house, met our parents, and my oldest sister, Carmen, sort of found him attractive, and they started a romance. They started a relationship.
Nice.
He came back to the U.S. Eventually, he made a couple of trips back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
And within a year, they were married, and they came and lived in the Lower East Side. And as a result of that, within a year, my father came to the United States, living in the Lower East Side. And within 2 or 3 years after that, we came to the United States.
Mm-hmm.
So out of that random decision that my father moved from the outskirts as a farmer to the city, looking for progress, looking for
More
opportunities.
opportunity.
This came to him. This came to our family. And in reality, that was nothing that he could have planned.
Yeah.
I do believe that it was sort of like there's divine intervention in that.
Hmm.
And I think that that's also what happened. And so this is how all of our family, we came to the Lower East Side, and then eventually we moved to Jersey when I was 13, 14 years old.
Have you ever thought about what it would be like if your sister didn't meet this individual?
My brother-in-law,
Yeah.
his name was Apolinar Apollo.
Do you guys still think you would have
I
came
reflect
to
a lot
America?
on that, and I've actually spoken to her about that because I speak with her a lot, and she in reality she said, the relationship, by the way, but the marriage didn't work out.
Mhm.
Okay,
That's a shame. It happens. It happens.
They had 2 children, but within 5 years, they realized that they were very different.
Yeah.
They really didn't know each other, and so they got together, and hence it just didn't work out because they truly didn't have a true romance to get to know who they were before they actually got married.
Mhm.
But in the midst of that, our lives would have been very different because none of us would have come into the States. We were of humble beginnings. We didn't have the finances to travel.
Yeah.
And the only reason why that occurred is because of that, let's call it is serendipitous in the sense, but in reality, I think we were destined to be here.
Yeah, no matter what.
It wouldn't have happened.
Yeah.
And so that one event changed the course of our lives. Like many of our lives, one event, whether it's something that's tragic, something that changes your life and your perspective, these are transformational events.
Mm-hmm.
That was a transformational event for us. And so today, my sister now is 76 years old. Obviously, she's been here a good portion of her life. We reflect a lot on that because all of the opportunities that we've had to go to school, to have careers, to be professionals, wouldn't have happened.
Yeah. If weren't that just simple moment in time. And I'm sure looking back on it, it seemed like such a minuscule occurrence.
Right.
And it just created this massive macro surgence of events.
It was a macro. In the micro, there was a macro
Yeah.
event. It really was. It was like we didn't know it. But I can tell you, when we arrived to Kennedy Airport, off that plane, we drove from our small town to the city of Santo Domingo in DR, and then we got on a plane. I never been on a plane, right? I'm 7 years old. I'm like, whoa, what machine is this?
Bird? Yeah.
And man, we're above the clouds. And to come here and then land on Kennedy Airport, and then you look around, I knew at that moment, this is going to be amazing.
Mm-hmm. There's no going back.
There's no going back. But I knew the minute I was actually coming down the stairs from that plane, in my mind, that moment to me was like incredible because I saw a almost like a utopia because we came from a small town. There were no buildings. There were no 6-story, 12-story. And then we come into the city with high rises and the culture that was in the Lower East Side, which is there today. I was eating matzo crackers, Chinese food, Spanish food. I lived in the boys club, just an eclectic group of people. I mean, in the Lower East Side in Bari, that was in the 70s. And in the 40s, that's when after the Second World War, a lot of the Europe came to the Lower East Side.
In the truest sense of the word, New York, from a kid who's lived in New Jersey and grown up, I just might have a jaded perspective when saying it's the land of opportunity now in 2021. And I'm sure it is, but I may not see the opportunity because I come from so much, I guess, privilege and opportunity growing up in suburban New Jersey and not really have had to struggle necessarily too much. But for you, like that really is the truest sense of like coming into the land of opportunity.
Absolutely. Without a doubt. We have lived
endless.
We have lived that. We are living my father's dream.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I see my life because he dreamed of opportunities for his whole family to be able to truly take advantage of the opportunities that the United States offers.
Yeah,
and that was really amazing. And for him he came to this country at the age of 50 with a couple of dollars in his pocket and really no great skills. He wasn't someone who came in with a college degree. He came in with a grammar school degree, but what he had was drive.
Yeah.
He had a tremendous work ethic, imagine for him. So he came in and started to work like most people that come into the country with very little skill sets in terms of marketable. He came in, worked at a restaurant, washed dishes, and eventually he went to work at it's called Radner's, very famous place on the Lansing Street.
Okay.
A Jewish.
Is it still around?
I know, not Radner's. Some other places on the Lansing are still there, but Radner's is not. Katz is still around. That was
the Katz Delicatessen.
Katz was there for the longest time. They're still there, and so to see that, and then eventually he got into a job that was on 9th Avenue. He was there for 10 years, and he retired from there. Again, this is someone that I think just showed us every single day, if you believe in yourself and you work hard, you can achieve your dreams. It's not going to be easy, but you cannot be afraid of work.
Yeah.
And work in and of itself has never killed anybody in that sense.
No,
right? Now, obviously, you're working. So, yes, it's tiring, it's exhausting. But when you have a sense of inspiration that you are doing this within a legacy and a visionary, for me, like my father, that to me, to this day, inspires me to do better, to be better, to become more. And that's the beauty of having that. And I'm very fortunate. I mean, I think that I've met a lot of families who don't have the nuclear family, right? And so
it's not something that's all like too crazy uncommon nowadays either.
It's not.
And we are really in a really, really different moment of time, and what a family is, what a family means. From one person, it varies from household to household, as opposed to having this really core nucleus, what a family is.
Right.
From years 20, 30, 40 years ago.
And the family is changing. The concept of family is being defined in a very different way today. But at the end, it's being driven by love. Right? Yeah. If you care and if you love, the family dynamics are always different. The players are different. The characters are different, but the essence is the same. The essence is always the same. And that's what drives our lives, is driven by this invisible force called love.
I really actually, in the past 2-3 months, I love telling my friends and my family that I love them, because it's just when you genuinely love someone, you just genuinely love it, and you just say I love you, and you just it's something you radiate. It's not something you can and I don't mean it. I just mean it in just the purest sense of the word.
Right.
That's it. I just love you.
It's that simple.
Yeah. When I say goodbye to my friends after a night of hanging out, love you guys. See you later. Till the next time. Because I know it's back when, you're 18, 19, 17, when you're a younger person, the most important thing, was just, where are you going to hang out with your friends? What are you going to do on a Friday night? And forget about it. Last night I was in bed and sleeping by, I think, 11 o'clock. And one of my friends called me and he's like, hey, are you coming out? Because it was a friend of mine's birthday party, and they were all in New York City or Brooklyn seeing an artist. And I was like, oh, dude, I just woke up. It's 1:30. And it did for a split second go through my mind. I was like, ooh, I could be there in a half hour. But I still decided, I'm just going to go to sleep. Just going to go to sleep.
And thank God you woke up.
Yeah. Right? It's really... There's a lot of things, sometimes I get upset about and angry, and really, really at the end of the day, I have a bed to put my head on, and there's a roof over me, and I have the abilities to self-sustain myself. I can go open up my refrigerator. I can take food out. I can cook food. I can go to the supermarket. Yes. I can purchase food. And we were talking about living a minimalism lifestyle. And how my potential goal is to move into a bus or a van and do that for a period of my life. Don't know when. I don't even know how it's going to happen. But I will literally be cleaning up my own poop when that's just something I'm gonna have to do. Indoor plumbing is something we take for granted so much.
Absolutely.
And there's 2 real necessities I've boiled it down to. I need to be able to cook my food comfortably, and I need to be able to go to the bathroom and shower comfortably.
Right.
And I'm just gonna that's something I'm gonna have to do, is clean up after myself in the purest sense of the word.
on a basic level.
Yeah.
But isn't that what again, going back to Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? Basic shelter.
Yeah.
Right? And think of that, Andrew. You've had the luxury of being born, obviously here in the U.S., of having all these things, the infrastructure of the country and of your home, based on your parents' development relationship. Your father was a dentist.
Yeah.
Right? Talk to me a little bit about your dad.
Well, you said briefly like you didn't really get to really know your father until you were 21, and you went and kind of learned what his backstory was like.
Right.
My father, he took his own life when I was 20 years old, and that was awful. Like, it was just awful. It was disgusting. And for like, I really, for those like 6 days, I mean, I wanted to just disappear under a rock. And, I know a lot of my friends didn't really know what was going on until it was like all over.
Mm-hmm.
So the period timeline of events is I went hiking to Minnewaska State Park on a Sunday, late July, come back. My dad's home and we just had a conversation. He asked me what the state park was like, who I was with, what I did. And I just told him like, it was, we were at Minnewaska. We hiked to some waterfalls. We were hanging out at some gazebo for a little bit and it was just fun. It was casual. And he's like, you really like being outdoors, don't you? And I was like, more than anything. And he told me, he's like, live life outside. Live like that's easy for me to do. And then the next day I slept on my couch that night, Sunday into Monday. I woke up, my dad woke me up. I think it was like 6 a.m. He was leaving to go to work, woke me up, gave me a hug and a kiss, said goodbye, I love you. And then he went on his way. And I don't know, somewhere it was kind of brewing for a while because my mom brought it up. She said, he's not doing too well. So in that drive, he just decided he wasn't going to show up to work and he wasn't going to live anymore. One of my dad's really good friends, Joe, he still kind of beats himself up over this. Cause they always call each other. My friend Joe, he works a night shift and my dad, works obviously a morning shift. So my dad would be going to work and Joe would be leaving work, kind of at the same time. So they'd call each other, just catch up, talk sports, baseball, Yankees, whatever. They would just have a conversation. They'd have a free association. And that morning, Joe never called my father and he still kind of holds himself for that because he thinks if they just had that conversation, whatever they talked about, just in general, if he just was able to talk with him, maybe something could have changed. Yeah. And, he never showed up to work and my mom got a call at probably like 10 or 11 o'clock. Then my mom called me and she's like, do you know what, your dad was wearing? And I was like, I don't, but I knew exactly what was going on because it's happened before. He had an attempt when I was like 16 where he just kind of went AWOL and no one really knew where he was. So, it was on a Monday. We didn't know where he was for like 48 hours. And then I think this is why I really don't go to movies anymore, probably because of this. My aunt, God bless her, she's one of the most incredible people in the universe. She's like, come on, we're going to go to the movies. And we were with 2 of her grandkids, my younger cousins. We went to go see like this little Despicable Me movie, one of those. And like we were in the film, sure enough, like we get a phone call and we're like, we got to go. And like my little cousins, Bella and Brody, are like, I don't know, 7 and 5, 9 and 7. They're young. They don't know what's going on. They don't know that, their Uncle Fred is missing. He's gone. Maybe he's not coming back. And they were like, what's wrong? Why can't we stay? And my aunt was like, oh, I have a stomach ache. We need to go home. And sure enough, you walk in the door and you just kind of know, like, it was all over, like that, that massive, I guess, saga, the 48 hours beforehand, it was all gone. It was done. They found him and his car in like some abandoned um, like construction site down in Jamesburg, around that area, because he did dental work in a prison at a corrections place. So they found him there in some abandoned like housing projects that were being built, and that was it. 48-hour manhunt search was all just came to an end at that moment, and I think it was like 3 days later, we buried him, and then we just you just live the rest of your lives.
Yeah.
That's it. It's fucked up. It's fucked up. Yeah.
It's very hard.
And
you were 17?
I was 20.
You were 20?
Yeah, I was 20. And, a few weeks ago, one of my dad's best friends came from New Mexico for their high school reunion. And like you said, like you got to know your father. I mean, I really was just starting to get to know him and understand his life before he had kids, before he met my mother. Like, the coolest fucking thing. And like, man, you want to talk about like giving your left testicle? I would give my left and my right just for a day, like to snowboard with my dad, because I skied with him once and it was amazing. And he talked about being when he skied as a kid. He said how much he loved it, and he was part of the ski team in high school. And then, he got into it more and more. But eventually, he enrolled in the U.S. Army and was part of the U.S. Army Reserve for 25 years, did a tour in Iraq, and they helped pay for his dental school. So he just wasn't able to go anymore. But it was like Martin Luther King weekend. I think it was like the first season I started riding. So I was like 18. He took my younger brother, and I went up and met him with my friend Rob. And he's just like, let's do a good run. Let's do a long run, because he was just riding the bunny slopes. I was like, yeah, let's do it. He's just like, he's riding like these khaki pants, like not even like, and just a jacket, like not even like ski clothes or anything. He's just ripping down the mountain. I was like, he's got it. Yeah, this is rad. This is rad. But you talk about, understanding your parents, your grandparents, and hearing other people's accounts of like what a friend and what a person he was. Like, I never got to like experience that, just because I was just starting to get to like that cusp where we can share those experiences together, or we can go and get a drink at a bar, where we can go and see a concert together, and go and snowboard together, go on these travels and adventures together. And it's just what it is. And like for a while, like a really long time. I mean, I actually, like a year ago, I actually just started going to therapy for it, and kind of worked my way through all of this, because I felt like a lot of pain for a lot of people. Like my mom lost her husband. Like my uncles lost their brothers. People lost their dentists. Like people lost their friends. It never like occurred to me like, oh, like at the very root of it, before all these people lost their friends, like I lost my father.
Right.
To hell with those people who lost their dentist, like they were just their dentist. They didn't really know who he was outside of him as a dental practitioner, as someone who just cleaned their teeth.
Right.
And like, I really didn't know much about him, and I still am like learning a lot about him. Like as time just progresses, like it just, yeah, it's like, yeah.
No, I think it's, loss is very difficult. To lose somebody, to lose your father, to lose our parents, knowing how significant their relationship is to us is very, very powerful.
Mm-hmm.
And it also, it's one of those, it's a transformational moment. It defines us.
Yeah.
And through this loss, just like I lost my father when I was 25, it began for me the evolution of what it is to be a man.
Mm-hmm.
Because at that moment I realized that he was only 70 and he died prematurely. I mean, he was a young man in relationship to, he should have lived to be older, 80, 85.
Yeah. I'm learning that 70 is not really that old.
It's not that old. In reality, the first 60 years are the toughest, and then you're cruising after that. Mm-hmm. So, to live to be 70, even 25 years ago was still less, because and to see that, and he was a healthy man. He never had an issue. I never saw him go to the doctor. Didn't take medication. It was so abrupt that within 3 months he went from a healthy person, and this is how death is, right? It comes to us in so many different forms,
Yeah.
and it impacts our life. But just as you were describing, and over time, I'm beginning to understand that death is not to scandalize us. Death is not to make us live in fear. Death is part of life.
It's to help us live in celebration of the people that are with us, celebration of thyself, celebration of like just life's small happenings that really don't seem big on a microcosmic scope, but it's like the most cliche thing in the world to say, like appreciate the little things, but like truly like appreciating just like that the morning coffee in the morning where you can step outside, like the sun's just hitting your face, the birds are chirping. It's like that is the essence of life.
And when you look at to be alive is a miracle. We're surrounded by this beautiful nature that your father said, live outside a lot. That's something that we see nature unfolding every single day. The sun comes up, the moon comes up, and then we get another shot at it. We don't control that process of nature. We don't control the day, right? And then all these events that are happening during the day, in reality, it's hard to anticipate what's going to happen next. But it's to live a life not in fear, but if you live a life appreciating the day, that's all we get.
Yeah.
All of us get 24 hours.
Living life sometimes I think it's equatable to being on an airplane, because you don't do anything. You don't do anything. And so, little backstory, a couple weeks ago I went to Miami. My flight got canceled out of Newark, so I flew from Newark to Houston, then to Houston to Miami. And everyone's like, what? Why? How? What are you doing? Like, all I have to do is just get on the plane.
Right.
I have no responsibility in that regard. I just get on the plane. I'm putting my life in someone else's hands. Like, that's fine. Like that's easy. I can do that because they are trained professionals. And sometimes, you just go through life how you're sitting on an airplane. You wake up, the sun's going to come up, the sun's going to set, and the moon's going to come up, the moon's going to go down, and you're going to have another day at it.
Right.
And it's so easy to get caught up in that cycle. And it happens so fast, and you don't even notice it until like there'll be some, maybe it's not catastrophic, maybe it is, but something will happen where you're just like, what have I been doing for this past month, for this past week, for this past year? And maybe it's because you see success coming from your friends, success from your family, success from another outward perspective. And you think to yourself, well, why can't that be me? Well, it absolutely can be you.
Right.
But it's like you, at the end of the day, you are your own source of joy, your own source of happiness. And you can never really live for someone else without living for yourself first.
Very well stated. Very well stated.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty also of what we're trying to seek. We're constantly seeking. We have this need to fill the void.
Yeah. We all just want to feel something.
We all want to feel something. We want to feel, again, is that sense of belonging, that sense of relationship, that sense of understanding what this life is about. And that's the beauty of the whole process, is to be able to truly be aware and be awake. To be awake to the moment, to this day, this moment. How many things had to go well, perfectly right, for us to come and sit here? And we planned this for months.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, a lot of things did not go well this morning. And this afternoon, you can...
Push from here?
Yeah, there you go.
So, right, a lot of things didn't, right? And if you think about it, it's sort of like...
There we go. Bring it closer if you'd like.
And then lower.
Yeah, little microphone adjustment.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. We're still learning here.
Yeah. So no, but I think that that's the beauty of the process of being able to do that. Every
Mhm.
single day is to be grateful
Yeah.
and to have that grateful heart, that attitude. You There's a quote that says, "Knowing love, I can accept all things,"
Mhm.
and that's what it's about. We're accepting our history as it happened, as it unfolded. Some of us don't want to accept our history.
It's
We fight
hard.
against our past.
Yeah. It can be very hard. And it can be very easy to dwell on that.
And it's so natural. And it's also a very natural thing to feel sorry for oneself. The shoulda, coulda, wouldas.
Yeah. I think about the shoulda, coulda, wouldas sometimes, and I think, you know what? We talked about fear.
Right.
And like, okay, so I think to solve fear is to just be to open yourself up to love is the way that you can combat fear.
Right.
Because a lot of things we do or don't do are out of fear. They're out of this. You're scared to open yourself up in some way, whether you want to try and play music, whether you want to be a professional athlete, whether you want to go and study, like dance. Those are all moments of capturing your fear and being uninhibited.
Right.
There's that moment, there's that one fleeting moment, you're reaching your flow state, you're putting all of the preparation and practice to work right here.
Right.
And there's a quote where I can't remember who it was, but it's some philosopher from European and Roman times said, luck is nothing more than preparation meeting skill.
Right.
And that's it.
Right. And luck favors the prepared.
Yeah. Luck favors the bold.
Yes. We have to feel this sense. And it goes back to that, right? How understanding who we are, like, what Socrates says, know thyself. A life unexamined is not worth living.
Mm-hmm.
We have to know that is really where our greatest battles are fought from within. We can be our greatest friend and we can be our greatest enemy. We ourselves within ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And if we are not unhappy with many people around us, we just have to look in the mirror. Because in reality, all these experiences are going through that person that you look at in the mirror every single morning.
Yeah.
Like every morning, we get to see ourselves through the eyes of other people.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes, like 99% of the times, we disagree with that perception that the other person has of us.
Yeah.
We don't think that's who we are. But that they're like, no, this is who you are. And we cannot accept that. And so we can't also accept the other as they are. We want to mold them to love them as we want them to be.
Yes.
But that's not love.
No, it's
when you change, then I'll love you.
Yeah.
It's like there was a play years ago that was called I Love You, You're Perfect, Now Change.
That's a selfish way of loving. But it's like, I hear a lot of relationships just go awry because someone's not able to love the other person the way that they are and take them for who they are. And it's like, you're not friends with someone because of the things you like about them. You're friends with them because of the things you're able to accept about them.
Right.
Those weird quirkiness, the things that they do that they irk you. Yeah, they might irk you sometimes, but then you're just like, there's always those moments where it happens and you're like, oh God damn it. Like, I hate that I love that. It's one of those moments.
I hate that I love that.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. I like that quote.
It's fun. It's applicable a lot of ways.
I hate that I love that. But that's the beauty, right? So if you look at that's amazing because most of our relationships, we struggle because we want them to be something that we in our ego want them to be, not as they are.
Yeah.
And we cannot really truly love the other as they are. We struggle. I mean, I struggle personally all the time with my wife, with my kids, with my colleagues. I want to change people. But then again, it's also, I see that my sense of fear, and I don't know whether you relate to this as well, but whenever I am afraid of circumstances, it's because it's coming through me.
Mm-hmm.
And I also want to control circumstances. This very event, this very moment,
Yeah.
right? You know, it's like, oh, should we do a podcast? What do we do? How do we do it? This has taken us months, and this is something that's been suggested by so many people.
Yeah.
And yeah, we're like, well, what's the environment? What do we do? We had to. Life is trial and error.
It took us. This is our third go at it.
And this is
our third go at it in our second location.
Right.
We moved from your dining room
my dining room
to now this fantastic studio at Academy of Broadcast Media.
And I think we finally got it. This is it. This is the location on so many different levels. We're here in Patterson.
Mm-hmm.
This is like grassroots.
Yeah,
it's perfect
for you especially. Like it feels like you've had this calling for so long
right.
to do a podcast. You called me in the summer, I think, like
yes,
5 months
July.
ago. Yeah,
yes, it was in July.
A while ago.
Right.
And now we tried it a few times, and now it's come full circle. Not just in how we're doing it, but the location as well. Like we're from your grassroots in Patterson, that now we're right back here doing this idea that's been brewing for 6 years, give or take. You've been saying,
yes,
yeah.
Yes, it's been a concept that has been presented for a while, and the beauty of it is that I think that this is something that I was talking to my son Adam.
Mm-hmm.
This was a couple of months ago, and he said, you know, if I'm looking for a place to hear a word of maybe I'm going through something, where do I go? Where's the source? What do you do? And so that's the essence of this podcast. That maybe something that somebody hears something here can help one person. That's the goal. The goal of this podcast is to help one human being who listens to it. And like we were saying before, it's already helped both of us.
Yeah.
Like we have been helped by this idea, this event, and this application that we're putting in. Because in reality, we're doing it out of love. We're doing it to be able to give a word and to use that which we are being given naturally to maybe help somebody who listens, who's going through a very similar situation like you losing your dad.
Mm-hmm.
When I lost my father. How many of us have lost our parents? Many of us, on so many different ways.
Yeah.
You cannot even, it's so unique to our own personal history, but it's universal to our humanity. But those are the relationships that really, really define us. And so those relationships, after you lose a parent, for some of us, it is our mother. For some of us, it's our grandmother. This rock foundation
Mm-hmm.
that has given us the foundation to be who we are, who have defined us, that is a moment of true transformation. And it is a moment also to be embraced. We're dealing right now in our society. COVID has brought that fear into our living room, into our face, into our lives,
Mm-hmm.
and into our existence, into our drama of our history. And this is also an awakening. It's a moment of awakening for us to see, what do we do with our time that is so fragile? How do we love the people around us? How are we conscientious? Do we have compassion? That's really the key. As human beings, we have that innately within us. But if we're selfish, we kind of kill that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like the story of the Good Samaritan. I go back to that story over and over again. I don't know if you know that story. It's a really beautiful story.
I'm not familiar with it.
It's a biblical story that actually somebody asked Christ, who is your neighbor?
Mm-hmm.
Right? And Christ concretely says, well, he speaks in parables all the time because we just cannot understand the truth concretely. Somehow we don't get it.
Mm-hmm.
And so in a parable he gives of a man, a man has been robbed and beat, and he's in the middle of the road, and a priest comes by and sees him and passes him by, goes across to the other side of the road. A Levite goes by, a rabbi,
Mm-hmm.
and he sees him and he goes to the other side of the road. And then a traveler, a man just doing his business, riding his mule to the next town because he was on business, sees the man, takes compassion on him, puts him on the mule, on his horse, brings him to the inn, leaves him there, stays there with him overnight, cures his his wounds. And although he's not healed, he has to move on. So he tells the innkeeper, here's the money so that he can stay here overnight and tomorrow. On my way back from my business, if you spend more than this money, then I will reimburse you. So the question is, who is the Good Samaritan? Who would you say is the Good Samaritan of those three?
Okay, it's easy to say that the Good Samaritan was the individual who picked him up, put him on his donkey, and carried him to safety.
Right.
I think the better Samaritan was the innkeeper who was able to understand why he did this, just out of compassion, out of love. He didn't do this for any ulterior motive. The man riding the donkey wasn't getting anything out of this.
Right.
He was just doing this. He was acting out of love, not out of fear, and out of like, how can I change someone else's life by doing something simple, just providing him a basic need, something, a necessity. And who knows, maybe, in a modern time, it's maybe a similar story would be, you help an abandoned, you help a kid in Africa who really, like, he can't provide for himself. He's very malnourished, and you go over and you do I don't want to use the word charity, but I'll use it in this case. You do a charitable job. Right. You go over there, you can provide for them. You can give them STEM labs. You can give them knowledge that they don't have access to.
Exactly.
And that individual, that person, those people that you go and help, one of them can grow up and maybe solve cancer, solve world hunger. Yes. He can solve one of life's biggest problems now because he was given the foundation to do so.
Right.
And no one gave him that. Nobody gave that person a simple human need, a necessity, a basic foundation that they should have and not have to be struggling for.
Right. And that is the essence of being a Good Samaritan, right? Usually every single day, just walking through Patterson or any town, wherever you and I happen to be, we're going to see someone in need. Yeah. Every day, every single day, I encounter that. And I'm open to it. And then I ask myself, first of all, do I see that person in need? Do I see, in terms of that parable, do I see that person in the middle of the road who's bleeding, who's hurt? Or do I ignore them?
Yeah. Are you even conscious to it?
Am I even conscious of that person?
Or do you even have an inclination to help them?
Right. Now, do I have the time to help them? Do I have the resources to help? We never think. Those are the two things that always seem to hamper and hinder our ability to help another human being. It's like, I don't have the time for you right now.
Yeah.
And I definitely don't have the money and the resources to help you. So good luck with that.
Yeah. But it's great that you want to help, but like, what is your plan to help is the other thing. It's like,
but think of this, right? Yeah. The beauty of it is that, just as Khalil Gibran has stated, to truly give is to give of who you are. It isn't like, I'm going to give you that. It's to be present to the person.
Yes.
Even if that traveler saw the person hurt and just stopped and said, hey, are you okay? Do you need any help? That in and of itself is the beginning of that process to be in consciousness to help somebody else out. And that happens every single day. We have opportunities on this planet every day that will happen to us. The question is, are we awakened enough, conscious enough to see the need that the other has? Do we identify with their suffering? Do we care about the other person's suffering? Do we even give a crap about, hey, that person is having a horrible day. Their existence has been hard. Maybe they lost someone. We don't know.
No.
And we don't know what we could do to help them just by being present or just listening to someone express what they're going through. Many times, that's all that most people want. They don't need resources. They just need another human being and their ear and their attentive just to listen. Tell me your story.
Yeah, just to simply, hey, how are you doing? Are you okay?
and to have the patience to hear for an answer,
Mm-hmm.
not as a social protocol. Good morning, and then you keep walking.
Yeah.
And you never encounter the other person.
How often do you say like, "Oh, how are you doing?" in like airplane mode? "Oh, I'm doing good," and you like just an automatic response.
Right. But most of us, I think, really want to be heard.
Mm-hmm.
Again, it goes back to those fundamental needs of being human. We want to be heard. We want to be acknowledged. We want to be in existence. And to be in existence is to be in relationship with the other. It could be our parents. It could be our children. It could be our husbands and wives, our partners, whomever it is, that interpersonal dynamic. And that I think that is the essence. I'll give you a very good example of something that happened to me concretely.
Mm-hmm.
I was called by a friend of mine that someone had come to her who had just lost their wife. Age 40, both 40.
Mhm.
They're raising a 3-year-old boy. And the woman died from one day to the next. Literally. He woke up, she was alive, they tended to their kid, he went to work, he called 3 hours later, there was no answer, he called 2 hours later, there was no answer. And then he eventually called someone and they said, your wife passed. So he was devastated by that.
Yeah.
This happens to us every day. You know, COVID, people die. We couldn't see them.
Mm-hmm.
We had to have face-to-face video conferencing. It was insane. And we realized how fragile life is. And then when we don't have the people that we love, we realize how much we really could have done more to really understand who they are. You know, hindsight is always 20/20.
Yeah.
So this man didn't know what to do. And I was called just to hear his story.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, of course, give me his number, give me his name, and I'll call him. And I called him right away. And I happened to be in a place outside in nature on Gara Mountain. I was kind of like asking myself, Lord, what do you want from me? Like, what am I supposed to do now? Like, what's my mission on this planet?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that phone call came as a response to that universal request out to the world.
Yeah.
And literally, I was able to talk to this man. I just gave him a word. I just listened to him. And I just put in perspective that we are losing every day. Every day we are in loss. This day is leaving us,
no matter what we do. Yeah.
No matter what we do, like you said, I get on the plane and I wake up and I'm in the other city already.
Yeah. Well,
this is what life is about. Like John Lennon said, life is what happens to us while we're busy making other plans. This is why it's to live in consciousness, to be aware every day of who I am, understand who I am, my sense of nature, and be able to also relate to the person next to me who may need someone just to listen to them, just to listen. And it's really difficult to listen.
Yeah. Everyone wants to speak.
And we want to be heard.
Mm-hmm.
We want to be acknowledged. We want to be seen. We want to be seen. We don't want to be invisible, right? Ralph Ellison wrote a book called The Invisible Man.
Mm-hmm.
And that was really in terms of how, as an African-American man, he was not being seen. He was invisible in nature. In society, he was not being acknowledged. Mm-hmm. So that's a story that resonates with a lot of us on so many different levels. We all, as a human being, we want to be acknowledged and we want to know that we are special because we're unique. We're human beings.
Yeah.
And that's really what the nature of being alive is about, to be able to connect to the other person and have the patience to be able to listen and to acknowledge who they are.
That's the essence.
It is the essence. It is the essence.
You know, you were talking about like lending an ear, and I have this one instance. So in New York City, there's a lot of homeless people. And there was one instance I was walking by Central Park, and I got to a street corner, and it was a busy part of the day, like 4 or 5 o'clock. Everyone's rushing, going everywhere. And I don't even know how I got on this thought process. It's a little messed up, but I thought this homeless person was an actor.
Okay.
Just because he was too good at it, if that makes any sense. And it's a terrible thing to say, but I thought he was like method acting for a
role.
Yeah, or it was part of like his college curriculum or something. And I remember looking at him, and like everybody's walking by him, He's sitting on this busy street corner by Central Park. Everyone's rushing by him, like not even paying any attention to him. That's also why I thought he was an actor as well, because I'm like, there has to be like someone here has to also like see this other individual sitting down on the busiest street corner in New York City, and life is hustling by him 1,000 degrees a minute, and no one sees what I'm seeing. Maybe, I mean, it's one thing to see what I was seeing. It's another thing to think it. I don't think anybody was thinking that this guy was an actor. That was just me.
In your own process.
Yeah, that was just me in the process. But in the simplest way possible, no one saw this guy even sitting down on the street corner, had a sign. He was yelling at the top of his lungs just for not even help, but I guess acknowledgement is how I would put it. He was he just said like he wanted like a hot meal. He was recently homeless. He needs help. And it seemed that no one even saw what I was seeing, and no one even knew he was there.
Right.
He was the loudest person on that street corner, even louder than the cars flying by, the honking of the horns, just the general sounds of the city. That was the one thing making the most noise, and I don't think anybody heard him.
That's
at all.
remarkable.
Yeah.
Everybody became deaf ears to this man, but you saw him.
I saw him. He was there. You know, maybe other people saw him and they just chose not to acknowledge him, as I did in my own degree. But yeah, he was there. I thought he was an actor. And I remember I was with my friend Will. And at the time we were in New York City, we were shooting stuff for our demo reels. And I got back to, we got back to Port Authority. And I said to him, I was like, dude, like that homeless guy, it seemed like he was too good at being homeless. It almost seemed like he was acting in a way. And he's like, what does that even mean? And I tried to explain to him my process. I was like, the way that he was trying to garner people's attention, it wasn't chaotic. It wasn't frantic. It was almost methodical, and it was almost thought out. And what he was saying was not of a frantic human being, but of one who was almost like putting on a show.
Right.
And that was just how I perceived it. And he probably wasn't doing any of those things.
But it's similar to example, I don't know whether this has happened to you, but it happens. I mean, when you're in New York, this happens all the time.
Someone hand you their CD or something?
No.
Here's my mixtape, man.
No, that's never happened to me.
That happened to me recently.
No, what's happened is I get to a corner and someone who's in the corner comes to ask for something, right? I go into the Lincoln Tunnel. There's somebody there with a sign saying, I'm homeless, I need. Now, the question is, going back to this moment of, do we acknowledge other people? And who do we acknowledge based on the importance that we give them? This homeless guy, in relation to me or to you, is irrelevant. We don't know him. In society, he's pretty insignificant, right? He doesn't have the typical standard wealth. He's not a person of importance. He doesn't have authority. So how easy is it to ignore those people?
Extremely easy.
And yet, we're driving, and unexpectedly, I'm waiting for the light to change, and this man comes over. He's not asking me for anything other than something, right? The question is, in my mind, do I judge that man for being homeless or not knowing his history? I have no idea how he got to that state. I'm sure he wasn't born like that, right? Time, situation, circumstances, many things.
Time makes a fool of us all.
It does. So for me, I take whatever money I have that I think I'm going to give to him, usually is $1 or $5, right?
Yeah.
And you give it to the person. Now, I don't know what he's going to do with it. And to me, that's not on my conscience.
No, that's his prerogative.
I offer you something because you're asking that I would help you. Well, what you do with it is either you buy something to eat or you buy whatever. But that's for you to determine.
In those instances, what do you do? So you acknowledge him?
I acknowledge him.
And he says, hey, can I have $5? And you just say no.
I've never seen someone who asked me for a specific amount of money.
Yeah. That's pretty true as well.
Nobody says, hey, do you have $100? No.
Yeah.
Do you have $1? No one ever says that. They just come up and say, can you help me?
Mm-hmm.
That's really what it is. Think of that, Andrew. That's powerful. Can you help me?
Mm-hmm.
But those words, spoken or not, we see that within our own family. Whether we acknowledge it or not is the difference.
Mm-hmm.
My sister lives alone in her own apartment. How many people acknowledge her loneliness? How many people call her within our own family? How many people invite her to go have lunch, to go to Toro's, to take a walk at Gary Mountain?
Yeah.
That is acknowledging the suffering of someone else, knowing that they live alone.
Mm-hmm.
That is true suffering because they're by themselves. So when you see that, that is what consciousness is about, is to be awakened to the suffering of others and to actually be present, okay? And this is what our life is about. We go through this life, again, going back to what we said earlier, a life of 100 years on the planet Earth is but a blink of an eye.
It is not a lot.
In relation to the universe of time.
We thought in the 1960s, 40 years from now, in the year 2000, not even 2020,
right,
we would have flying cars. We'd be sending people to the moon.
Right.
In 2000, we thought 20 years from now, we'd have flying cars. We'd be sending people to the moon. We don't even have a flying skateboard from Back to the Future yet.
Right.
we
we are sending people to the moon.
Yeah, we're getting there.
Space,
yeah. We're getting there.
Right. And so, I mean, think about it. But in reality, what I reflect on this is that is for a percentage of the population who can afford to take a trip to the moon. Or can take it to, like what we just had right now with Jeff Bezos and Amazon and, you know, and
Tesla
and Tesla and this race that they're on and you know, so all these things are that's fantastic. I would love to take a trip out to see the Earth from the galaxy's perspective.
Cool.
I would love that.
Yeah.
But in reality, we're doing those things, and this fantastic. Science is great, and this is the beauty of being human and having this unlimited potential. Is also to be able to see on Earth the needs of the people around us, like right here and right now. It's like, you know, this is a beautiful story that Leo Tolstoy, this amazing Russian writer, he was actually a very spiritual person, but he actually wrote a really beautiful, simple children's story called The Emperor's Three Wishes. Mm-hmm. Have you heard of that story?
No, I haven't.
All right, put maybe a couple of minutes so I can talk to you about it. This is a beautiful story because it reflects what we're talking about right now. Mm-hmm. This was a young emperor who needed the answer to three questions. He said, if I have the answer to these three questions, I'll be a phenomenal emperor. Mm-hmm. One was, when was the best time to do each thing? Who are the best people to work with? And what is the best thing to do at all times?
Okay.
When is the best time to do each thing? Who are the best people to work with? Mm-hmm. And what is the best thing to do at all times?
So I have three answers to those questions.
Okay, go ahead.
The best thing to, what was it the first? The best thing to do in the moment? Or
what is the best thing to do?
What is the best thing to do
at the time?
At the time. The moment is how you seize it. And like, I procrastinate, and I'm sure everyone does, on many things, even something as simple as like making a phone call or scheduling something.
Right.
And you just don't know, because you wait for that right moment. There will never, ever be a right moment. And like, it took a long time for me to like encompass that and understand what that meant.
Timing.
Yeah. They're like, the timing is whatever you want to make it. And like, sometimes maybe you'll get lucky with the way you procrastinate and some things line up together, and that's just the timing of it.
Right.
And that the answer to question one is the moment. That is the best time to do it.
Right.
Right in that moment. Like for this hour right now.
Perfect timing.
Yeah. Number two, who are the people you should work with?
Who are the best people to work with?
Your friends. And the people you love. Your friends are a reflection of yourself. Your family is a reflection of yourself. And I find working and collaborating on ideas with friends sometimes it can get like a little wonky, and you know, it can cause rifts in relationships, but the rifts come from not necessarily a disagreement on ideas, but it comes more from not even having the foundation built to be cultivating and working with these friends from the beginning.
Right.
Number 3, you said, was
What is the best thing to do at all times?
whatever you love to do.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Those are good answers.
Yeah.
You're right there. You're right there. And this is what the emperor found, right? They said to him, a lot of people gave him all his, he's the emperor. So you had a military suggestion, recommendation, you had a legal, you had an administrative, but he wasn't happy with any one of those answers.
Okay.
He heard that there was an old man, a poor old man at the top of the mountain who was very wise. Have you ever heard? This is a story about the poor old man at the top of the mountain story.
Okay, I feel like I've heard different variations of this, but
And there are a lot of variations,
Yeah.
right? So this is one of those variations. And the beauty of it is that he, being the emperor, the poor man at the top of the mountain only saw poor people. You couldn't have an audience with him if you were a rich person, and he's the emperor. So he said, you know what? I'm going to dress myself as a pauper, as a poor man, but I'll bring 2 of my guards to wait at the base of the mountain just in case, right? So he then goes to the base of the mountain. The 2 soldiers are there waiting for him, the 2 guards, and he walks up hours and hours up to the top of the mountain. 4 hours of trekking. He's not used to that.
yeah, no,
He's the
he has
emperor.
people who walks for him.
Exactly. So he finally gets there. It's a sunny day. It's exhausting. He's exhausted. He sees this poor old man working and tilling the land. Literally. Putting a seed and tilling the land. And he asks him the 3 questions. He says, I know you don't know me, but I'm only here to ask you these 3 questions. I heard that you're a wise man. If you could just give me these answers. And he asks him, what is the best time to do each thing? Who are the best people to work with? And what is the best thing to do at all times? The emperor ignores him completely. I'm sorry, the old man ignores the emperor completely.
That's a cold shoulder.
Doesn't even look at him, just keeps working. 2 hours pass by in silence. The emperor looks at the man. Obviously, he's tired. It's hot. He's exhausted. He goes, please, let me give you a hand. So the old man concedes and gives him the hoe. He starts tilling the land. The old man sits down, and he's just watching the emperor working in silence, observing him. Another 2 hours go by. Out of nowhere, the old man hears a sound coming through the woods, and he says, do you hear that? He says, there's somebody coming out through the woods. And as he's saying that, a man comes out, and he's actually bleeding.
Oh my.
And the emperor sees this man bleeding. He drops what he was doing. He goes to him, and he brings him inside the house. He takes off his shirt. He bandages him up. He has to run to the river, get water, come back. He does that a few times until the bleeding stops. And then he has him laying there on a cot inside the old man's house.
Yeah.
By this time, the emperor is exhausted. He has not done this ever. So he stands by the door, and he literally just falls asleep standing up. The man that he just helped looks up at him and says to him, I am sorry. Please forgive me. And the emperor says, why are you asking me for forgiveness? I don't even know who you are. He says, I know that you don't know me, you don't know who I am, but my intention here was to come and kill you. And I met up with the 2 guards down at the bottom of the mountain. They gave me this wound, but when I got here, you saved my life.
Without any hesitation.
And with that, I am forever indebted to you. Please forgive me. The emperor was so moved by that he said, of course. He says, but why did you want to kill me?
Yeah.
And he said, you made a decision as an emperor that took away half of our land. We're already poor. We can't function. We can't survive. And then your decision, your policy created a situation that was even worse. And I swore to myself that you must be a bad man and I was going to come to kill you. I realized that I was wrong. Please forgive me. The emperor was so moved by that he called up his 2 guards. He said, bring this man home, make sure he gets there, and I'm going to reverse that policy because obviously it was a bad decision that is hurting people, not helping them. He turns to the old man who's watching this whole thing unfold. And he says, if you're not going to give me the answers to the 3 questions I've asked you, I'm leaving, because obviously you're just ignoring me.
Yeah.
And the old man says to him, but you already have the 3 answers to your questions. He says, how's that? He says, when you saw me tilling the land, you took compassion on me and you helped me. I was the most important person. That was the most important time.
Mhm.
And what you were doing was the most important thing. When you saw that man who was hurt, you went and you hurt him. He became the most important person, the most important time, and the most important thing. So wherever you are, whatever you're doing, whomever you're with, that is the essence
That's the
and
moment.
the answer. This is what this is about today.
Mhm.
This is what I hope we can do for someone who at one point may listen to this, hear it, and be helped by that moment that they hear these words. These are words coming from 2 fools.
Yeah. Yep.
Let's make that very perfectly clear to everybody.
We are flawed human beings.
We are imperfect. We are a perfect imperfection.
Mhm.
Okay, this is what our humanity is, and I say that personally, as a fool, as a man who realizes that the only thing that I know is that I know very little.
Mhm.
That is how I come into this, and my life is to stay humble. To stay humble, knowing that there are so many people who know so much more,
Yeah.
who can help so many people in so many different ways. This is something just as a simple throwing a pebble into the ocean, into the lake,
Mhm.
to create ripples. We hope that these ripples help someone who listens to these words.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, as we're just diving deeper and deeper into the moment, can you unlock your phone? Does it say you even have service in here? Because I have no service in this building, so
I
really,
I think, but
yeah.
I think I have some service.
Yeah. Well, every time I come in here, we talked about it earlier. Like I have no service when I get in here. I don't know why it happens, but it just does.
But you know why that's happening, honestly, is because our phones are an extension of our hands right now.
Yeah.
And it's very difficult to have a moment of conversation.
Mhm.
This is
Without an interruption.
exactly. And this is what actually is this is called the art of conversation. It's a lost art, you know.
Mhm.
We no longer speak to people for this amount of time without an interruption from our phone or from anywhere, because we have lost the art of conversation. And this is why having a moment over a cup of coffee to free associate is such a valuable thing, because we don't have time. We're always going so fast, going somewhere, doing something with someone,
Mhm.
that we forget how to live in the moment as much as we can. We've had to stop all the noise around us, both you and I, in our busy lives, to say, you know what, this is important. We need to do this. And the reason why I think this is critical is because I need to do this. I honestly need to sit here to speak with you we're from 2 different multi-generational moments in history,
Mhm.
and to be able to relate to something that's so universal as love and family and a sense of belonging and acknowledgement. This is what this is about. We are learning from each other in this interpersonal free association and really practicing the lost art of conversation.
Yeah. Listening, talking, understanding, and being able to empathize.
And have compassion for the other,
Mhm.
to see the suffering of the other.
That's it.
It's a beautiful,
That's really
beautiful
it.
thing. It's a fantastic thing, you know, and it's all driven by the essence of our human life, which is love.
And connection.
That's it.
Ironically, connection through phone, no, but connection like person to person, you
Well,
can't. But you
Well,
can't.
this is the beauty of the paradox. We are using technology
Mhm.
in the way that allows an interpersonal connection to be made that is actually a positive connection, a good thing,
Mhm.
right? Not to proclaim anything outlandish or to, beat other people up and curse them out in judgment. And no, this is not anything like that. This is really about coming together and having a discussion as two human beings and relating to our human existence, which is actually very universal. And this is what we are. This moment is we will never cross this river again.
No, it's already gone. Like as we're speaking, it comes and it goes. It's
Right.
the flow state.
And this is what it's about. We're trying to create a sense of flowing conversation and a flow where people can come in and relate to what we're talking about, and really to be able to understand that this is also their history, their situation. It's very universal. And hopefully at some point we can bring other people to come in as guests to discuss what their story is about.
I always do love hearing different perspectives. Like even 2 months ago, 3 months ago, when we did this the first time, I had no idea that you came to America when you were 7 years old. I just thought that you were born here, just because it just seemed like it was something so automatic.
Right.
And even meeting people that aren't born here is it's so exciting to hear their perspective and to hear how they made the journey and the trek here, because it's not all of a sudden you one day and decide like I'm going to leave everything at home. There has to be a series of buildup of events for you to want to go out and really test the waters.
Right. Imagine you're leaving everything that you know. You're leaving your land, your people. You're embarking on a journey to an unknown place. But think of that, the beauty of this is the adventure of life, Andrew. This is what happens to us every day.
There's that corny line. It's never about the destination, but about the journey.
And think about it. And the journey is the journey. That's the beauty of the journey. We are on this journey. We've been on this journey prior to our being born. We started this journey. You started your journey, and I, like every human being that's here, we started this journey in the same way, at the point of conception.
It's weird to think about because, yeah.
That's the micro. At that moment of conception, two people come together in love and they make love. Let's just not call it sex. Let's call it love, right?
There's a difference.
So they make love and there's a conception. At that moment, our nature, our true nature, is creating another nature. That is the miracle of life. That is a miracle to be acknowledged. And the only reason why I exist and I am who I am is because two people got together, they fell in love, they got married, they did the traditional marriage and everything else at that time, and they had 11 children. And I am the last of 11. And this is also the beauty of it. How can we become the last and so be of service to others by putting ourselves last?
There's this really beautiful monologue at the end of this album by Mac Miller. I believe the album is The Divine Feminine, but it's this really, I had no idea where this monologue's from. I don't know who's speaking, but the topic of conversation is about this woman. She's old. You can kind of hear it from her voice and the way that she talks, but she talks about how she fell in love and how she created the life that she did, how she met her husband. And when she was out with her husband before they even got married, she would hear such phenomenal things about the gentleman that he was with. And then, they went on to get married and they created 2 kids. And she talks about how extremely happy he was just to be able to have these offsprings, to create these beings and watch them grow up and provide for them. And just to hear the perspective that someone else brought so much happiness into another person's life. Like I sometimes think of things on a selfish scale, just because we are naturally self-sustaining human beings. But to hear, how you, as yourself, as the way you are, can bring such joy and exuberance into another person's life to the point where you're creating another life out of it, that's wild to think about.
That's beautiful. It's a miracle. That's a miraculous process.
Yeah.
And we live that. We are that miracle process. We just need to see our divine nature in the process. And that's the beauty of it, to see this divine breath that flows through us. And it will not die. Your father is not dead because in spirit, you have him in your heart. You reflect on about his life all the time.
I never thought I was like him growing up, but now I understand, like, because I understand what my father is like just through the way that I act and the way I experience things. And like, yeah, you know what? Because the instances when I was, younger, 13, 14, 15, I would see my dad in social situations and scenarios, and I would see like how exuberant of a human being he was. And I didn't necessarily understand that, but then I can kind of step back and see myself in those similar situations. And I've had people tell me this all the time, like my father's friend, Darren, he just like, I don't even remember what I was doing, but he's like, God, you're just like your father. And I was like, yeah.
And you were like, yes.
Yeah. I mean, I knew I always was and have been, and it probably really didn't start to show until like I was in my earlier 20s. And then, now,
what a wonderful confirmation for you.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I if I could be 10% of what my father was, I think I would be an amazing man. Yeah. Only 10%. I just want to be 10% of who he was. Because I know that he was just, to me, he's a hero to me. I mean, I love this man and what he represents, and I embody that. Yeah. And his spirit is what drives me to everything that I've done in my life. My parents, my mother, my father, they're my foundation. Just like your parents and everybody's parents. You
know what I found really interesting that you said in your story about your father was how was he ever in like in any armed forces at all, or was part of the military at all?
No.
You said the one line. I think it was someone you said that your dad would be a good soldier, is a good soldier.
That's interesting. That's actually it's a phrase, right? It's a phrase that is used to, I'm sure it comes from the military, right? Yeah. To be a good soldier, it really is a military term. And my uncle used that term to indicate that he was the best. Like he was persistent, never gave up, would give his life for the other.
Yeah.
That's
has your back. Like
yes,
you
will
want
never
that
abandon you. You know that
foxhole.
person will never abandon you. And that's how he saw his older brother, my father. And that's the kind of man that I want to become. And I want to evolve into every day to be that, to give your word, and it's your word.
Yeah.
To say I can be there, I can do this, and show up. And if you can't, I can't be there, and that's okay. But just to be genuine and to be honest. That's all it is. To be a human being is to be fully accountable for your own behavior. It's not to blame that person or this person, my mother, my father, my brother, my sister. We have a lot of justification.
Yeah.
We justify our existence all the time. No, it's like, you know what? I did it. I take ownership, whatever it is. And just to be fully accountable to your existence. And that's the beauty of it. And once we come to terms with that, that also gives us the ability to be mature human beings. And that's the beauty of it.
Yeah. Self-accountability. We've covered so much. I think right before we were having lunch and you said something along the lines of like, I just speak and it happens.
It's free-flowing conversation. It's about flow.
This was it.
It's about flow.
Do you want to recite that poem you were talking about?
Sure. Wrap up? Yeah. We're going to leave you with this beautiful poem, which I think is fantastic. Is Bruce Lee, his wife died. When he died, his wife Linda Lee wrote this beautiful book about his life, and Bruce Lee to me was the greatest martial artist. I'm sure many people can identify with his work. But as a person, he was a phenomenal philosopher. He actually studied philosophy. That was his major. And but anyway, so his wife, upon reflecting on his life, she wrote this poem that was written in the year 300 BC.
Okay.
Right? And it's a beautiful poem that there was an old man that wanted to leave something for the next generation so that they can reflect and see what life is about. Similar to what you and I may be doing now, maybe for the next generation. Someone may watch this and go, oh, I saw this 50 years ago.
That's the coolest part of this is, this can be present. Some you can see 100 years from now, 200 years from now.
It'll be in video format, and we can go back to this. Or your grandchildren can someday, oh wow, look at granddad. Look how young he looked. So So this man wrote this poem really as to give to the next generation as to what is the philosophy of life that works on this. Because we're always trying to figure this out.
Mhm.
We're on this planet trying to figure it out. How do we achieve happiness? How do we achieve balance? And so he wrote this poem and he said, young man, it can also be young woman. Young man, seize every moment of your time. The days fly by. Before long, you too will grow old. If you believe me not, see here in the courtyard how the frost glitters, white, cold, and cruel on the grass that once was green. And do you not see that you and I, as the branches of one tree, with your rejoicing comes my laughter, but with your sadness come my tears. Love, love, love. Could life be otherwise with you and me?
That is empathy. Anything you feel, I can feel it too.
That is the essence of being a human being.
The connection.
That's what it's about.
Yeah.
And hopefully this conversation, this free association allows us to be open to that connection and to have compassion and to be alive, more fully alive,
Mhm.
and to live our life to the maximum.
This is just the start of for both of us to understand our lives, each other's lives, and the individuals, friends and family that are in our lives, and to start cultivating stronger relationships.
Yes. Yes. That's what it's about.
Yeah.
It's having a transformational existence.
Mhm.
Transformational existence. That's what we're seeking, to live as transformed beings. It's a beautiful thing.
We all want to level up.
We That's fantastic.
Yeah. Is there anything else you want to say before we end this?
No, with that, I think we thank you for the privilege of your time, because I know that time is of extreme value, and this is a wonderful thing. And I just want to leave you with this little quote. It's not a quote, but it's like a passage that I hope that we can use every single time that we pair off.
Mhm.
It's until we meet again, somewhere in time.
And that's that.
That's
So till the next time. This is this was free association over coffee this time.
yes.
Maybe next time it'll be sushi. Maybe it'll be pumpkin pie for Thanksgiving around the corner. Thank you to Academy of Broadcast Media for allowing us to use the studios to record this visually and audio. I'm Andrew Fiume.
And I'm Luis Hernandez.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Till the next one.
Have a good one. Take care.